Have you ever wondered why sometimes the moment you stop obsessing over a manifestation, it suddenly shows up? Or why your greatest breakthroughs happen when your mind finally gets quiet? Hi there, my name is Kelly, and today we are going into one of the deepest spiritual principles behind manifestation. Something Eckhart Tolle calls the power of presence, or what many spiritual traditions simply call nothingness. By the way, this nothingness is not empty at all. It is actually the most creative, powerful, and magnetic state you can be in. So, if you ever felt stuck in your manifestation journey, or if overthinking is blocking your desires from materializing, this video will help you understand why stillness accelerates manifestation and why presence is more powerful than visualization alone. So, are you ready? Let's get right into it. First, I want to start with a line from Eckhart Tolle that made a huge difference in my life. He said, when you lose touch with inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. Powerful, right? In other words, you can't manifest from a place where you've lost your inner center. Because when your mind is noisy, reactive, fearful, or even anxious, you're not operating from your creative power. You're operating from old conditioning. In the spirituality and neuroscience, we see the same truth repeatedly. When the mind quiets down, the subconscious becomes open and receptive. And with that, you connect to something deeper. Intuition, clarity, inspiration, and what some people call divine intelligence. This is why ideas suddenly come to you in the most unexpected ways, in the shower, during a walk, or right when you wake up, for example. And by the way, this is something that happens to me frequently. Ideas come to me out of the blue when I'm doing the most ordinary or meaningless thing. For example, when I'm washing dishes, working out, or walking to the grocery store, for example. And the reason is that creation emerges from silence. Think of nature for a moment. Everything arises from nothingness, from invisible to visible. Nature from the divine source or any other denomination that you want to call, to the visible, to the matter, to the form. So the same principle applies to your manifestations. Now let me bring in psychology for a moment. There is a well-documented effect called the Zeigarnik Effect, discovered by psychologist Bloomer Zeigarnik, which explains that unfinished thoughts keep looping in our minds, causing mental tension and even stress, exactly because they are not finished. But this is a whole other conversation. But my point is, this tension is exactly what blocks our manifestations. Because when you are in a state of trying, forcing, or obsessing, your nervous system moves into stress, contradiction, scarcity, or even fear. For instance, fear of what if it doesn't happen? So Eckhart Tolle calls this the pain body. You may or may not heard. If you follow his work, you probably already know. But what is the pain body? The pain body is the active, habitual emotional energy that keeps us stuck in suffering patterns. And Eckhart Tolle says what you react to in others, you strengthen in yourself. And the same is true with your desires. What you fear, you energize. What you obsess over, you push away. And what you chase, you signal it's missing. So, reiterating what we've been talking about all along, manifestation doesn't happen from tension. It happens in presence, which is a state beyond our thoughts. Presence is exactly what Eckhart refers to returning to the now, or the power of the now. But then you may ask, Kelly, what is nothingness then? Nothingness might sound abstract, but let's make it simple. Nothingness can be the space between your thoughts, the awareness observing your mind, the stillness behind your personality. Nothingness can also be the moment where you're not wanting, needing, or reaching for. Or nothingness can also be even the natural state before the mind starts labeling everything. So there's several ways that you can classify it, or you can put words into nothingness. But in other words, nothingness is the purest form of being. This present moment is what I'm calling the power of nothingness, because several things happen in this space. First, our vibration naturally rises. The ego quiets down. Fear goes away. Resistance disappears. And we essentially reconnect to the creative field of infinite possibilities, which, by the way, Dr. Joe Dispenza also talks about this as well. But think about it. Almost every spiritual tradition, whether it is Buddhism, Taoism, or mysticism, says the same thing. Stillness is the source. Presence is the gateway. And silence is the creative womb of reality. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's bring in neuroscience again, because this is where things get even more interesting. There is a state known as alpha-theta brainwave dominance, which happens during meditation, deep relaxation, or moments of flow. Imagine, for example, musicians when they are in the zone, exactly like that. So this state is when the logical mind quiets and the subconscious becomes open and receptive. Not only that, but during this state, this is when neuroplasticity, remember neuroplasticity? The ability of the brain to grow and adapt. So this is where, or this is when, neuroplasticity expands and emotional resistance goes away. So if you are a meditation lover and practitioner like me, you are aware of the amazing benefits of meditation. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that meditation increases emotional regulation, creativity, cognitive flexibility, and intuitive insights. So, what am I telling you that? Because this aligns perfectly with what Eckhart Tolle teaches. He says, in the stillness of presence, you can feel your own formless and timeless reality as the unmanifested life that animates your physical form. This is why your best visualizations, ideas, and manifestations begin to flow only when the mind is quiet. So that said, nothingness is not the absence of power. It's actually the gateway to it. Now, let me share a bit of my own experience with nothingness, because this concept was a game changer for me. Before my spiritual awakening, And I've mentioned this in previous videos. I was constantly in a mental loop. You know, a loop of fear, financial anxiety, self-sabotage. If you've been there, you know what I mean. But my mind was too noisy, too anxious, too attached to outcomes. And I have to admit that this is a horrible place to be because it seems that the more you try, you're walking backwards, you know? So because of that, surprise, surprise, I wasn't manifest anything, or I wasn't manifesting with clarity. Well, actually, I was manifesting something. I was manifesting through lack. But it wasn't until I learned to enter, to be in presence, in the state of presence, even for 30 seconds, that things started shifting for me. Because the moment I became still, I could finally receive inspirations, ideas, impulses, intuition, and subtle guidance. So, guidance from my spirit guides. Well, we all have our own spirit guides and angels. And that stillness was exactly what helped me break all the patterns, attract opportunities, and rebuild my mindset for true abundance. And that was when I finally got things moving in my life. So, if there is one thing I wanted to take away from this video today, is this. Your manifestation don't come from your thoughts. They come from the space beneath it. The more you learn to soften your mind, to breathe into the present moment, and to rest in that quiet, formless awareness, the more magnetic you become. So remember, presence is the energy that dissolves fear, clears resistance, and lets your desires flow toward you instead of away from you. As Eckhart Tolle says, the power is in the now. And when you honor the now, even for a few seconds, life begins to reorganize itself around you. In the next video, I'm going to show you how presence can speed up your manifestation dramatically and how you can enter this state even if your mind feels like it never stops. And until then, remember, stillness is not the opposite of creation. Stillness is where creation begins. So, this is what I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next video. Take care.